Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us for our webinar on Microsoft Teams calling solution with MDS and Ribbon Communications. To start off the presentation, I'm going to have Dev from Microsoft discuss a little bit about what he does and some products from Microsoft, and then we'll get going on the presentation.
All right, thank you, Sam. Morning, everyone. Happy to be here. Devon and Ramsing, Public Sector Director, Modern Workplace with Microsoft. And we thought this webinar would be very timely. And I'm just going to share with you a couple of things that Microsoft has been noticing, what's happening throughout the region with our Microsoft Teams platform. Climbing the ladder to be the #1 platform for collaboration globally. Of course, using the help brought on by the pandemic. But before that, Microsoft's roadmap for Teams is continuously evolving. And one of those evolutions specifically deals with Teams Voice, or the Teams calling solution, which is why we felt it a need to have this webinar and invite you guys. The Teams Voice in both commercial and public sector, we are seeing taking a lot of uptake in governments and in banking sectors, and somewhat kind of revolutionizing the whole telecom space. And we are seeing telecoms now wanting to evolve into technology companies. And with that, we have system integrators in the likes of Marine Data Systems and Ribbon Technologies, who is a SBC provider, as well as other edge devices, and they are quite known in the telecom industry. That being said, I'm going to hand over to Jason, who is the practice lead with Maureen, to carry on. Jason?
All right. Yep. Thank you, Devon. Yep. So Jason Polche, infrastructure practice lead over at Maureen Data Systems. We also have Paul Axtell and Jennifer Driscoll from Ribbon on the webinar as well. So just some quick intros on our end. We're going to kick this off with an overview of Teams. So going through the different, modules, features, the collaboration that it provides organizations, and then we'll dive down into the calling capabilities from a high level, and including the cloud calling plans, the direct routing, and then we'll hand this over to Ribbon, and they will go through all of their integrations as well on the direct routing side. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A. So we'll have a live Q&A. You guys could type questions into the chat, and Sam, Matt, and the rest of the folks will field those, and we can answer those at the end of the webinar. All right. So what's going on here? All right. So Microsoft Teams. What we've noticed recently, so the pandemic definitely accelerated this, is a very high uptake in adoption. So right now, and this is a couple months old, this slide, right? But the last time we grabbed this data, Teams was seeing an average of 44 million active users a day and 1,000% increase in video calls. So as you can imagine, with the work from home that's going on with the COVID pandemic, there's been a very, very large shift to using secure remote collaboration platforms, and Teams has been leading that endeavor, right? So the security piece is a very important piece. So there's other, tools out there such as Zoom, right, where there's not as much governance around how users adopt it. So users kind of just download the tool, jump into meetings, they can do whatever they want. They really don't know what they're sharing, what's being broadcast across that meeting. With Teams, because it ties into all the Office 365 suite and all those security controls, you can use very tight governance, control, and policy around what is exposed, what your users can do in the Teams client, and what they could share and what they can deliver. So it's been a very popular tool from a remote secure collaboration standpoint, a 200% increase in weekly meetings minutes. So Teams meetings has been kind of leading the charge here. And now what we've been seeing, right, as this pandemic has been progressing and carrying on, is there's been a very large shift in people wanting to consume the calling platform, right? So leveraging Teams for PSTN calling. So we'll dive down into that, into what that brings, all the different feature sets and the advantages of using Teams as your secure remote collaboration tool. So from a high level, what is Teams? I'm sure most of the people on this call have used Teams, know what it delivers, right? But we'll cover it from a high level. So it's really a hub for all of your collaboration within your organization. So leveraging applications. So there's applications you can install and tie in into the Microsoft Teams client. Sharing files, so secure file sharing capabilities. At the back end of Teams is SharePoint. So any of those SharePoint libraries or policies you have, you can build upon with Teams. Using the calls, the chats, and the meetings module, right? So what we usually see internally is most of our communication starts off with a chat. It could escalate into a meeting, and then you could use the call capability to bring in additional outside people from a PSTN perspective if that's needed as well. Bots and connectors, right? That there's add-on services. I think Ribbon will have some of these as well that they could speak to. But adding in or the API tie-ins to third-party tools and integrating that seamlessly with the Teams solution. So the chat piece, right? So there's a lot of enhancements over the old Skype platform with Teams. One of it being you can see all of your chats right in one main screen. It's threaded, it's persistent, and the experience is the same whether or not you use the desktop app or the mobile app. You can have private chats. You can loop in people for group chats. Information can be shared and restricted based on those back-end policies. No matter where you are in the world, right? Whether you're a guest user or you're a local tenant user from that Office 365 organization, you can collaborate with everyone seamlessly within the same tabs. There's integrations with emojis, etc., stickers. There's a whole slew of things, backgrounds that you can share. File sharing can be done within these same threads as well. So you can see in that graphic on the right, there's a little section here for files. So when you share files within a chat, that is persistent, it is secure, and every user in that chat can go back and reference those files at any time. It's not a point in time type collaboration where you have to download it and consume it right there. You can always go back and access it. And again, what we mentioned, right, is we see people generally starting off the conversation with the chat piece. So you check the user's presence. If they're green, right, they're available. If they're red, they're probably busy. Yellow means they're idle. And then checking that presence, you can message them, and then that conversation generally will escalate, especially in a group chat, into a larger call. So there's a call button. It's kind of cut off here in this graphic, but you can escalate any chat out into a call. And again, using the calling capabilities that we'll go through, if you have a PSTN calling plan or a direct routing plan, you can bring in PSTN users into these chats and escalate them out to them as well. So on the meeting side, and this is where we've seen a very large adoption as well, the video collaboration, right? So most organizations have some sort of video conferencing infrastructure in place. And what we've seen is integrating that now into Teams. So Teams is relatively new in the native endpoint support. So I know Polycom, there's Yealink, there's a bunch of other vendors out there, Logitech, that create video conferencing systems that natively run the Teams clients. But a lot of organizations will have legacy, existing systems like Cisco, even Polycom, etc., that cannot natively run the Teams client. So we've seen a lot of integration using cloud video interop, so using third-party services such as Polycom, BlueJeans, Cisco, to take those video endpoints that are existing, save on that investment, right? You don't have to rip and replace anything just yet, and integrating them with the Team Suite. So now they can deliver not just remote meetings to their users, but they can also consume board meetings with the existing video room-based systems that are in place. So saving on that initial investment and then replacing those devices as they come up for renewal. And then using the audio conferencing tie-in, right? Now you can add audio conferencing plans into these meetings where PSTN users can dial in. There's 800 numbers, so there's toll-free and toll-based numbers available. You can create and port customized bridge numbers as well, depending on your region and availability. and integrate the Teams communication and meetings, where it's not just the Teams client where you can consume this, but by the regular PSTN calling piece as well. And then last but certainly not least, right, is the calling piece. So what does what is currently available from the calling platform within Microsoft Teams, right? So traditional things such as auto attendance, call queues, voicemail, right? So the auto attendant piece, let's start with that, has come quite a long way since Teams inception, right? So there are fully nested auto attendants that can be built within the Teams cloud. We have yet to find a use case where the auto attendant cannot match or enhance an existing on-premise auto attendant. So those could be fully nested. They could break out into other auto attendants. You could have them break out into call queues. So then the second piece of this would be the call queue structures, right? So this is a simplified version of like what a call center kind of does. You can create hunt groups that route in different ways. And based on the different departments or the different agents that are part of those call queues, you can route the calls, based on a structured set of defined routing commands. So there is some basic call queuing mechanisms in here where you can play messages. You can have it queue for a certain amount of time, and then route to different agents. It is not a full replacement for a contact center. That is something that we can integrate with right from Cloud Contact Center API tie-ins. Or also leverage direct routing to tie into those contact centers on premise. So we'll talk about the direct routing piece as well, because that's an important piece. Voicemail, so it's a fully unified voicemail. Both voicemail to email and voicemail transcription is natively included with the solution. So whether you get that voicemail or whether you consume that voicemail in your Teams app, so you can listen to it in your Teams app, you can listen to it through a voicemail attachment in Outlook, or you can read the Outlook email, right? If you're driving and can't pull up your phone, if you have some sort of Bluetooth capabilities, right? You could have that email dictated back to you, and the transcription is pretty accurate from what we've seen. And again, there's no add-on licenses for any of this. Once you're consuming these PSTN services or that phone plan within the Microsoft Office 365 cloud, all of these features are available to you. There's no tack-on or add-on charges. And then the calling pieces, right? So having the ability to make and receive calls anywhere in the world. So this is twofold, right? So obviously people are working from home. So in today's kind of scenario where we are, it gives you the ability, no matter where you are, whether you're at home, you're in your office, you're traveling at a hotel, right? When that comes back, to be able to make and receive phone calls from your office number, no matter where you are in the world. The Teams calling a solution leverages an audio codec called Silk. It's a custom-built solution codec that leverages, that's cloud native. It's meant to be used in low bandwidth and high latency type environments. So it does react very well, whether you're on wireless, whether you're on your mobile network, or whether you're at home on a wired connection. So the call quality does remain consistent, and it's meant to be able to take those hits in latency and bandwidth. And then on the mobile app as well, right? So whether you're traveling, you're on the road, you can also consume and make and receive those PSTN calls as well from your Teams mobile app, just as if you were in the office. All of the chat history, all the meetings history, all the calendaring, right? It's persistent and it's mirrored in both of the applications. So let's get into some of the different options with the PSTN calling, right? So we have really two ways, and then there's actually a variant on the direct routing side, which we'll get into on consuming this, right? So there's the cloud calling plans. So these are Microsoft provided calling plans. So when you go into the Office 365 portal, you enable Teams calling, you would add on a calling plan. So these are available depending on the region you're in. They come with prepackaged minutes for both domestic and international. And there's really no infrastructure that needs to be deployed here, right? It's just a button you click, you order that calling plan, and now you're off and running with those PSTN services. So depending on the number of users you have, these services, right, or these minutes, I should say, from these calling plans are pooled based on the calling plan type. So again, there's domestic calling plans and international calling plans. So you'd have different pools of minutes depending on how many users had each plan. And then on a region standpoint, you could have multi-region support in here as well. So if you had offices throughout the world that span multiple regions. There's different calling plans in different regions. Those would be broken out and pooled based on region. So you can have this different users in the same Office 365 tenant with different regional calling plans based on their location, how they're set up in the Office 365 platform. So very robust, very scalable, and they're constantly adding to that every day. And then on the other side of things, right, we have the direct routing piece. And this is really kind of the focus of this call, right? Ribbon is an SBC vendor. They are one of the direct routing providers with the Microsoft Teams calling plans, or I should say with the Microsoft Teams calling platform. And it integrates in a different way. So where we see this really winning is in two places where A, there's no cloud calling plans, obviously, or B, in large enterprises where you have a large amount of users and the calling plans become cost prohibitive. So calling plans, right, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. You need one calling plan per user. So as you can imagine, if you scale up into the tens of thousands of users, that number will get quite high. The direct routing piece gives you two options, right? So now you can tie in your Teams calling with your local PSTN services. So if you have PRIs or SIP trunks or whatever you have on premise, you can leverage those to make calls through the Teams cloud, or you can use direct routing as a service. So we'll go through both scenarios where you can use a vendor like Ribbon, send all of your calls to them, and then they become your PSTN provider, right? And they give you, so they actually broker that PSTN connection, but they'll go into that in more detail, but they give you call paths instead of calling plans. So now you can share, phone lines, for lack of a better term, between all your user base. So there's no 1-to-1 mapping here, right? You can have like a 10-to-1 or a 5-to-1 based on your call requirements, mappings, which is a significant savings on the calling side. So we'll go into some scenarios and what this looks like, right? So Microsoft Cloud calling, very simple. Everything's handled in the Microsoft Cloud. Nothing needs to be deployed by you on premise. There's no infrastructure you need to roll out. You need just a calling plan license. It needs to be available in your region, and you assign it to the user. You're off and running. All of the reporting capabilities are in the portal, right, that show you your different minutes pools, the breakdowns. And again, you could have two options there. There's domestic and there's international. So it's not one or the other. So if you go with the domestic plan, I will say this, you can still make international calls. There's another feature in the Teams calling platform called communication credits. So if you wanted to, you could absolutely assign a domestic plan to a user and use the communication credits to do per minute calling. The international plan is more of a prepaid block of minutes. So if you're heavy on the international calling, that may make more sense. So that's something that we can help as well scope out and decide what's the better fit, what's more cost effective for each organization. And then on the PBX side of things, right, the Teams PBX license is an add-on license that you can add per user, or if you're using Office 365 or M365 E5, it's included in that suite of products. So then if you're already an existing O365 or M365 E5 license holder, all you would need is a calling plan or direct routing to enable calling for your users. So then getting into the direct routing, there's a bunch of ways this can be consumed. What we've seen, and especially in enterprises, is when you integrate first with direct routing, you integrate with your local PBX. So a lot of companies will have an on-prem call center. They have a lot of desk phones. They have a lot of capabilities already built into their existing PBX. So this example shows a Cisco call manager. This will absolutely work with Avaya. We've done plenty of deployments with Avaya as well. Nortel, etc. Any vendor that supports SIP trunking, right? So on the bottom left, so down here, you'll see a session border controller. This is the session border controller that ties your Microsoft Cloud to your on-premise phone system. So this would generally sit in between the existing session border controller or voice gateway with your on-prem PBX, and then it has a SIP trunk directly up to the Microsoft Cloud. So then this gives you the ability for two things. You can route calls directly to the PSTN, your existing PSTN services you have today, and leverage those. So you can do direct DID mapping to the Microsoft Cloud, or you can do extension to extension calling with the existing desk phones and phone PBX infrastructure that you have deployed on premise. So this winds up being the most popular solution day one to get full feature parity, right? So instead of doing, again, a rip and replace, you integrate with what's existing, and then you slowly phase this infrastructure out and move all that over to the Teams Cloud, getting a cloud native solution. So this is just one scenario with direct routing. Another way that direct routing is consumed is direct routing as a service. This is leveraging that SIP trunk right to this cloud provider. There's many out there. Ribbon is our go-to provider with these cloud services, right? But this is a SIP trunk to their cloud. You don't manage the SBC. You don't manage any infrastructure. They do all the phone system tie-ins for you. All you're doing is configuring that SIP trunk in the Teams portal, and then you're off and running with those call paths depending on the regions that you need phone numbers for. So this is a cloud native version of using direct routing. Again, this would be if you didn't want to tie in with your local PBX. This is usually this is truly a cloud native solution for enterprises that will give you both that cost savings that direct routing brings, as well as the cloud flexibility of not having to manage any local infrastructure. So you don't have to go into the office, manage phone lines, manage equipment, etc. So with that, I don't think, I don't have anything else. Matt or Sam, we're waiting till the end for Q&A, right? We're not fielding questions at this time?
Correct, yeah, I think that's the plan.
Okay, so with that, I will hand this over to Paul Axtell from Ribbon, and he will go through their slide deck.
All right, thank you, Jason, appreciate that. And hello, everyone, good morning. I am Paul Axtell, and my associate is Jenny Drakel, and we are the account team for MDS, helping provide solutions for your voice network. So I'm a sales engineer, Jenny is the account manager, I think I just said that. So we're excited here to spend a few minutes with you and going over a high-level Teams-based solution, so we will get right to it. Okay, so about us. Ribbon is a relatively new name in the world of voice communication, so it's about 3 years old. Ribbon originally came about from the merger of Sonus and Genband. Genband, if you're not aware, was a spinoff of Nortel, so they got the service provider kit, and Avaya got the enterprise-based kit from Nortel. So Sonus merged with Genband. We came up with a new company name, Ribbon, and since that point, about 3 years ago, we've purchased several other companies to include Edgewater Networks. So some of you may be familiar with those. That now belongs under the Ribbon umbrella as Ribbon. And our latest acquisition was purchased and came to fruition late last year with the ECI team. So ECI is a packet optical networking company which provides core to edge IP solutions, security and analytics, as well as other optical networking technology solutions. So we have quite a depth and breadth of technology for us, and we're just going to today just mainly focus on the SBC's portion of this. And, whoops. Where you're going to find us. Our equipment today is in over 150 tier 1 service providers around the world. So you can think of Verizon, AT&T, British Telecom, Orange. We're at the core of those networks. We also are in the largest banks, airlines. So think of American Airlines, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and so forth. The RSBCs have been around, for a few decades now in various forms, and following up with that, we, definitely are able to host, and work with U.S. Department of Defense. So if you're looking at DoD, Army, Navy, Department of Justice, FBI, and other government solutions, we're FIPS and JITC certified on a lot of our equipment. So if there is a need to be able to interwork, as an example, with GCC High, or you need to have a JITC-based solution, that's something that we absolutely support. Okay. So, excuse me. When we talk about history and longevity of Ribbon, which is comprised of again of several companies with a lot of time in this space. We can absolutely include Microsoft as a partner in those discussions. So we've been partnered with Microsoft for many years, gold partner today, and from the days of LCS to OCS Link, Skype for Business, and now Teams, we've worked hand in hand with Microsoft to foster many solutions over the years, and look forward to continuing that relationship into the future. Oops, a hard time doing. So Jason went over this earlier, and just want to recap for just a moment. So typically when we're talking about Microsoft calling plans, as Jason had indicated, those are individuals who want Microsoft to be their service provider, right? So there is no connection of any external equipment. Microsoft provides you your numbers, and you're off and running using the calling plans. If, however, you have a need to tie in third-party equipment, it can be physically on-prem, such as a VIA, Cisco, ShoreTel, PBX or systems, or there could be other cloud solutions. Maybe it's 3CX in the cloud, or just using the private data center somewhere where you've got a asterisk-based, free PBX or whatever solution is that you're working with. Direct routing would be the way that you would want to go if you're looking to tie in those particular solutions. And so again, I think Jason touched on one or two of these, but some of the reasons you might go or might not go with a calling plan would be that the cost may not meet your enterprise budget, or perhaps the calling plan needed is not in a country that's currently supported today. So some of the reasons that you might use direct routing would be if again you've got third-party equipment that you need to tie into, if you have an existing contract with a carrier for another 2-3 years or whatever the case is. Those would be the typical reasons that you would select and go with direct routing. Okay. I am working on advancing here. Here we go. So really, what does this look like as we kind of hone down into a little more narrow focus into Teams, and we'll continue to go down till we eventually get to the overall SBC. I thought I'd start off with just a high-level overview of the voice options, or deployment options that you have here. And so when we're looking at a virtual deployment, the SBC here is just showing that, hey, I've got an SBC, it's virtual, it's on-prem, it's running a hypervisor, KVM, VMware, Hyper-V, something like that. And we're connecting to the on-prem PBX. This could be a hardware chassis, it could be standalone, could be highly available. Just depends on the solution that you're looking for. So we're going to continue to connect up to the service provider. This is what we do today. And so I know in talking with people, it's like, well, okay, well, now we've got an SBC in a cloud. What does that connection look like? That's kind of confusing. And really all you're doing, if you can think of just kind of a Visio diagram that everything is connected, you just kind of take that SBC, you drag it up into the Azure or other public cloud. And from that, you're still connecting to your on-prem SIP clients. If the SBC needs to act as a registrar, you're still connecting to your on-prem SIP PBX. You can have a connection, kind of a bring your own carrier that you drop right into the SBC. And likewise, if your SB or your PBX is not on-prem, perhaps it's the 3CX in the cloud somewhere. Well, then that's just it's just another IP address in a different part of the world that we're connecting to, right? So we still have the same security, the same high-level solutions that work on-prem are going to work up in Azure, to be sure. Okay. So I do want to go over a couple of the typical enterprise use cases as we, again, just kind of continue to narrow our focus here. So we're going to get into Teams direct routing, and I don't have a specific slide, but do want to kind of just bring in contact centers for just a moment as well. So we'll talk a little bit about security, first and foremost, what an SBC does, the interoperability capability, that it brings, as well as local survivability, the ability to interwork and assist with the ELIN or E911. Of course, we'll talk about Silk and third-party phone resiliency. Okay. So this is the kind of just a high-level view of what the SBC might look like being on-prem, connected to, connected to the phone system. So you've got your users here, and these users are shown to be on-prem. They could be hard phones that are Teams qualified, could be PCs, could be an Apple or Android-based phone running Teams application, whatever the use case is. Those users, their devices will register directly to the phone system. Okay, and then we have a SIP trunk that connects the phone system, i.e. Azure, Office 365, directly to the SBC, and hence, direct connection, okay, or direct routing. So we put the SBC on-prem, we bring the ability, using the SBC 1K, 2K, the ability to be able to interconnect with existing FXS or FXO type connections. So if you have an elevator, if you've got a paging system, alarm systems, if you have just some old analog phones, that need access, they can register to the 1K, 2K if need be, if they have their own PBX, and that's fine. But we do support the registration. So you're able to take these older systems. You may still have a significant investment in them. You may have purchased, a couple of years ago, a multi-million-dollar Avaya or Cisco-based PBX system, and you're certainly not ready to get rid of it yet. You can engage those devices, connect into the SBC, allow that SBC to interoperate, and provide any switch SIP connectivity if there's any issues between any of the devices connecting. The SBC is able to work with that, which we'll get into in a minute. And in short, if we're also talking about a contact center, we can have our highly available system in here as well to work with a large contact center. And maybe there's only a portion of the contact center that needs access to the Teams phone system. And if so, then that's great. Those numbers live up in the phone system. The rest of the numbers still live on-prem, with those agents taking inbound calls and/or if they need to make outbound calls as well. And so this is really the base of what this would look like if we're looking for a physical on-prem type solution. Okay. So getting into the individual use cases, really the SBC should be looked at as first and foremost as a security device. It acts as a voice firewall, so you can think of it as a typical Palo Alto or Fortinet firewall, but it's specific to voice. We do not do data. So any of the HTTP request, email, just regular based data traffic does not flow through the SBC. Okay, it's voice only, and then of course it does have the ability to deal with management, which is an HTTP connection, but that's the only piece that actually would go into the SBC. So you can either put us behind the SBC behind the firewall. In a kind of DMZ type scenario, or you can actually provide a public-facing internet IP address to the SBC, and then we can lock down those ports and so forth to provide the security that you would expect for a device sitting on the edge of the network. We absolutely support encryption, which is required to be able to connect to Microsoft Teams, and of course we have our call access control lists and access control lists. The ability to help deny denial of service or distributed denial of service attacks, malformed packet protection. That's something that we engage Mircom and other third-party companies to be able to verify that, hey, when we're running the maximum number of SIP traffic over the SBC, then we want to go ahead and start doing all our testing. And we use DDoS and DOS attacks while we're performing this testing, just to make sure that we can withstand those types of scenarios. And if you were to look at any of the Mircom or other third-party companies that go in and verify what companies state that their equipment can do, I think you'll find a favorable results in those reports. So SWE-Lite also, specifically the SWE-Lite, but all of our SBC ranges do provide the survivability aspect of this. And so what happens is we're able to set up redundant routes. So we've got a primary and a secondary route, right? That is able, the SBC is able to detect that there is something wrong with this route. Either I'm not getting an options ping, my 200 OK back from my options ping, or if I don't have options set up, but I sent a SIP message, never received a reply back, then we have a way of going, okay, there's a problem here. We've got a backup route. Let's go ahead and engage that backup route and automatically reroute that call around that either dead endpoint or a SIP trunk that may have gone down. And so we have multiple ways of being able to handle failed scenarios like the one shown here. Okay. And we do offer on board, I think I mentioned that earlier, a registrar. So for those phones, if you think of certain hospitals and universities and things like that, typically have hallway phones or dorm phones or something. And with everyone having their cell phones, most people don't use those. It's almost like a phone booth in a way. You take a picture of it as you walk by, but they are legally required. And so if those phones do need to be connected to something, and that's for E911 or 911 type scenarios, we're able to make that connection via either FXS, FXO, or we can be the SIP registrar for those particular phones. Okay, so enhanced 911 certification. Something happened here. Just a moment. Okay, so the enhanced 911 certification. So we absolutely are certified with Microsoft. So you can go up to Microsoft's webpage that shows, hey, these the SBC and software load that are verified to work with Microsoft Teams. And so we were the first company to be able to get E911 up and running and working properly with Teams, so that if you do have those phones that need, again, to connect up to the SBC, static type-based phones. The use case here is maybe it's a small enterprise with 3 or 4 buildings that are not next door to one another. Maybe there's some distance in between. But when someone calls out from any of those buildings, maybe a generic 800 number or a generic number for that company is sent out. And so if you're trying to call 911, and you end up with, hello, this is 911, what's your emergency? And all of a sudden you get disconnected. When they call back that particular number, it's just going to go to either an operator or maybe someone sitting at a front desk to take that call. Of course, they know nothing about the emergency call. So we have an ability to take that phone call, add the actual real callback number, or at least a number that is in that particular building where 911 is coming from. That way, when that 911 call is made, and if a disconnect does occur for whatever reason, the 911 operator has now an actual phone number that can get back to either to that individual or much closer to that individual. Okay. So we want to discuss Silk. Jason had brought that up for a moment. So Silk absolutely improves the voice quality over the last mile. And if you're looking at the left-hand side of the page here in the upper left-hand corner where the red box is, so those are your Teams users, and maybe they're at Starbucks, maybe they're on some Wi-Fi system, maybe it's their own home Wi-Fi system. Over a lossy type network, or maybe they're out in West Texas somewhere driving along in kind of a spotty area. So Silk is really able to overcome a lot of the potholes and the issues that you can see or literally hear with G711 and other codecs. So you may start hearing voice packets getting dropped and getting cut out, things like that. So when you are in that type of situation, this is where Silk would improve that last mile, that last connection. And so we do offer up Silk in our 9.0 release. The Silk license is free, so we used to charge for that. It was a nominal fee, but nonetheless, it is now free. It just comes with the 9.0 Suite Lite 1K, 2K. And so you're able to immediately take advantage of that if you do what's called transcoding, right? Because a lot of your carriers, your Cisco's and Avayas, would not understand the Silk codec if it was sent for them, because it is a Microsoft proprietary codec. So, meaning that we, the company, still have to pay to be able to use that codec. And so we've made that free to the general public. But the ability to make that Silk call all the way through to the endpoint, if it's on my cell phone, usually doesn't occur because of the carriers, right? So you would have to end up transcoding here on the SBC to a G711 type call on the other side of the SBC. So just be aware that if you do want to use Silk, generally speaking, you will need to do transcoding on the SBC to convert that to another codec that the carriers and or the Avaya and Cisco PBXs are going to understand. Okay. And this is a quick shout out. I know Yealink has these phones, and I believe Poly is also working on these phones. And that, there are times it can happen where either the SIP trunk to the phone system may go down, or for whatever reason there's some type of issue with the call getting into and through the team's phone system network. And so what Yealink does is they have kind of I'm going to put it in air quotes here, a dual registration, if you will. So when the phone gets plunked down and configured and powered up, it's immediately going to go out and register with the team's phone system tenant space there. But if for whatever reason it's connected, for days, weeks, or months, and that connection is lost, it has the ability to be able to register directly to the SBC1K Suite Lite and use the SBC as a registrar to be able to overcome that particular outage that is in play. It is to note that this is it's an automatic type scenario that does happen on the team's phone, so it is automatic recovery. When you want to make an outbound call, I think on Yealink there's actually a little button you've got to go touch. I think it's a little Teams button that you just connect and or touch on the phone display, and then it's like, oh, okay, I know that I need to be going to the SBC here. And so outbound calls absolutely would work. It's just not automatic. You've got to touch a single button on the phone itself. Okay. And so this is just the overview of the SBCs that we've kind of generically been talking about. I won't get into the speeds and feeds or anything like that, but just know that the information is here. We support FXS, FXO, T1, E1, across the world. Our SBCs have been sold, throughout, EMEA, APAC, and certainly the North and South America. And so, if you have any information, we've got our data sheets online. You can certainly look here, including some of our GENIC certified solutions as well. Okay, so we're going to touch on real quick Ribbon Analytics. This is a new solution that we have. It is a analytics platform, right, that is highly available and sits above the call flow utilizing plugin applications. So the solution is based upon a yearly subscription, and the analytics-based applications are fraud, robocalling, TDOS, monitoring, ladder diagrams, and NetProtect. NetProtect isn't really self-explanatory, so I'll get into that in just a sec. So really what we're doing is the platform is installed. The particular applications that are of interest are also installed on the platform. We start receiving call detail records or billing records, logging information, SNMP traps, things like that are digested from not only Ribbon equipment, but from Palo Alto Fortinet firewalls, from third-party devices such as Cisco PBX. We also interwork with the Oracle PBX. Excuse me. And so it's not limited to just Ribbon-based equipment, and we're always trying to expand that footprint, obviously, with other third-party manufacturers. And so we're taking all this call detail record, we're able to ingest it, And with that, we're able to then analyze what's going on, because with the SBC and policy routing engines and PBXs, we're able to see who is calling whom. How long did the call last? What type of jitter, packet loss, what KPIs are we interested in? And those are the types of dashboards that we would go in and start to create. So if you had a scenario where you're looking at, one of them is called the Wangiri effect. And that is a Japanese word that I believe means something to the effect of call and cut. And what happens is people, in today's day and age with fraudulent type calls, people are going to call in, to your phone, let it ring once, maybe twice, and they're going to hang up. And at some point, somebody is going to be interested and go, oh, geez, I missed a call from this individual. Maybe it's someone I've been working with. I don't have their number just yet. And so you call that number back, but it ends up being a high fraudulent based number. So Ribbon Protect is going to be able to see those types of things. Everyone leaves on a Friday afternoon. They're going to go, back in the good old days, they were going to, go out and grab a beer with their friends and so forth. And all of a sudden, it's noticed that, hey, we just had an international call go out to a high toll fraud company Friday evening at 6 o'clock, and this has never happened. And so the analytics system is going to see that. It's going to immediately, if programmed, it can send an email, it can send an SMS text-based message, generate alarms and traps to say, hey, I've got something here that doesn't quite look right. And so through that type of mechanism, you're able to educate the platform and say, any type of international call, go ahead and kill that. We certainly don't want that happening, Friday after 3 o'clock. There's no one in the office, so to speak. And so that's the type of application, this type of scenario that we do, look out and provide that types of really deep detail to be able to understand completely what's going on with your voice network. And so a quick case study is going to be like dial-through fraud, right? So we had a multinational food manufacturing company that kept having a dial-through fraud, and they couldn't understand what was going on. And so they were able to, we were able to see, we can take those CDR systems, our CDR records, which is what we did with our very first customer. They were having a problem, and it was a ribbon-based network, so RSBCs or GSXs and so forth. They were troubleshooting an issue that they could not find, but knew it existed because it was affecting their traffic. And so we were able to take all those CDRs, put them into the lab system that we still had, the system hadn't GA'd yet, and we were able to find that issue within about 15 minutes or so. And they right then and there signed the paperwork to purchase the product, and it's certainly in their network today. And so not unlike our case study here, right? So there's a problem that needs to be looked at, that needs to be overcome. And so once they looked at the fraud application and were able to deploy it, then they're able to understand exactly what's going on, what those numbers look like, who's calling whom, in a very nice human readable format, which we all certainly do love and appreciate, and understand that, hey, here's an anomaly right here. This is really interesting. And so through this process, they're able to understand what's going on, with that call toll fraud, and be able to then mitigate that completely. And so we're able to do this with robocalling. We are able to ingest third-party databases or work with third-party databases such as the FCC Do Not Call list, Nomo Robo, or even a homegrown database. So we're able to take KPIs, key performance indicators, and we have several hundred that we create for our systems. But if you don't like what we have and you want to create your own, then you're able to bring in your own custom KPIs. And be able to create your own custom dashboards based on what you want to see. So it's a highly evolved platform, even though it is only about 2 years old, and it is running, containerized solution. Very, latest and greatest technology as far as out, with where we are today, and we'll just continue using that as we move forward. So. I do believe this is my last slide, and so I think I want to hand this back off to, real quick. So this is just kind of, we've been discussing, we've got our edge solutions down here. So if you're looking at kind of a TJ Maxx type scenario, or where there's a bunch of small offices or even large offices, but not that many employees, we only need a couple machines to be able to register end of day sales, maybe a couple PCs and perhaps some faxing systems. So we can go with the Edgemark, which is Teams qualified, FXS, FXO, T1. We do have the same capability with the 1K, 2K, but there are some differentiators we won't get into today. But just be aware that we've got the Edge solution well covered. We have our more of our carrier grade solutions up here in our data center 1 and data center 2 with our central routing engine, our analytics right here that we just spoke of. So I'll leave this for you guys to take a look at. There's a lot of information here, but we also want to have a couple minutes left over for questions and such. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this to a close. And Jason, is this going back to you?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So I'll pass this back probably to Sam or Matt, because I can't see with my screen being shared the Q&A. I don't know if any questions came in, guys, or if you want to kind of go through those and we can answer those.
Yeah, we have one question to start off with. Does Microsoft Teams work with free PBX?
So yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was going to say typically, so you would need an SBC in that scenario to be able to connect up into Teams, and absolutely our SBCs work with free PBX. I will say that Jenny and I are on calls probably between 2 and 5 calls a day, where we're potential customers such as yourselves or perhaps even existing customers. Hey, we've got these systems, are they going to work? And we have ways of being able to manipulate headers, SIP messaging, and so forth. So if for whatever reason there's a little bit of issue between the two far ends speaking, whether it's a free PBX on one side and maybe it's an IVR system on the other, we're able to modify that SIP messaging to be able to make those work. And we've been able to do that for quite some time.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is, can I bring existing numbers to Teams? If so, can they be from different regions?
So yes, absolutely. The support for regions is dependent on call or cloud calling or cloud plan availabilities for that specific region, but you can absolutely bring numbers from your existing carrier over to the Microsoft cloud with Microsoft as your carrier. You could port them to one of Ribbon's providers. You can request net new numbers. One of the caveats, though, is that provider has to be available. I know in some of these Caribbean countries, the telco providers lock down availability, meaning there's one telco provider for PSTN services per country. So there's no integration, right? You would have to use like a PSTN circuit from that telco provider themselves. But absolutely, porting numbers to the Microsoft cloud is very simple, very straightforward process.
Thank you. The next one is, we would like to do some testing. How can you assist?
Yeah, absolutely. We have multiple offerings, pilot offerings, proof of concept offerings, full production deployment offerings, where we can hop on a call after this. We could schedule breakout meetings, right, with individual companies or customers that want to dive down deeper into this and come up with some use cases and offerings that we can deploy. But absolutely, we can help with that.
Yeah, Jason, if I could just chime in here, what I would say there is, if you can reach out to your MDS rep or your Microsoft rep, and just let them know of your interest. We definitely want to set up a call just to get a better understanding of what your current environment are, what your needs are, et cetera. And then we can give you the best option from there. I think also MDS will probably send out a follow-up email, just thanking you for joining the webinar. If you don't have an MDS rep, you could feel free to reply back to that, and that will connect you to somebody from the MDS team that can set up that conference call.
Yes, we'll be sending out the presentation and any relevant information that can help you with your next steps. So don't worry about that. We do have the next question. Can we reuse our existing conference room investment?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So there's another service, right, called Cloud Video Interop. It's a cloud-based video bridge, for lack of a better term, that will negotiate all the codec translations between your on-prem video equipment and the Microsoft Teams cloud. And then you will have the ability, right, when you create a Teams meeting, that link will show up as it's called like a VTC option, where any third-party video conferencing unit can pretty much click that link or use like that SIP URI to dial into a Teams meeting. So yes.
Perfect. Sam, you want to is there any more? Take one more, and then if there's any additional questions, we can answer them and respond via email.
Yeah, that's fine. We do have one last one.
Oh,
and this is probably for Jason and Matt more. Does MDS have experience migrating from Skype for Business to Teams?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we've been doing for years now, since Teams has been available. Also link to Teams, right? We have standardized processes and offerings to help with that as well for just Teams adoption.
Yeah, and just letting everyone know that Skype is going into retirement next year, so keep that in your back of your head. And then I think we do have time for just one more last question. If I have different branches, would I need each branch SBC?
So the answer is it depends. It depends on where those branches are, if they're in different countries, if you want different calling regions or country codes per user, right? So you can route all your calls through that direct routing trunk to either one SBC or multiple SBCs. It's very flexible. So if you wanted, or if you had an office, in Trinidad and one in the UK and one in the US, right, you could have an SBC in each location with local PSTN lines where you would be able to assign local numbers based on the user that office is assigned to, or that office the user is assigned to. So you can absolutely have multiple SBCs. You could also have one SBC, like direct routing as a service, right, to Ribbon's cloud, and then have multiple direct dials within there as well. So it really depends on what you're trying to do, but absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you guys for answering all these questions. As Matt mentioned, if you do have any more questions that come up, you can definitely reach out to us. I will be sending an email with the information, and contacts will be listed on that. And we want to say thank you for joining us for this hour, and we hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you.